everyone, welcome back. So in this video I am going to be talking about something that a lot of people actually aren't really aware what they are. So I'm going to be talking about neurogenic tremors. Now I was actually asked this by someone a little while ago. They said they would be, part way through receiving a massage treatment, and they suddenly experienced these tremors, which for them was, sort of like their whole leg kind of was, shaking. So they were kind of wondering what caused this. And in actual fact, these tremors can range from just sort of a relatively small area shaking. It could be a whole limb. It could actually even be the whole body. So I'm going to explain in this video, what causes these tremors, and sort of what you can do possibly to sort of either stop them when they happen, or maybe even avoid them. So these spasms really occur, general spasms during a massage may occur due to magnesium deficiency, causing spasms in the muscle. Possibly if there's a nerve issue, it can cause some twitching, and when you work on the muscle. There may be an underlying medical condition or disability. You may have the therapist maybe sort of overworking the muscle. If there's tension in that muscle, then overworking it can cause spasms. And also if there's an accumulation of lactic acid in the muscle, this may also cause some spasms in the muscle. But what about these more noticeable tremors that can happen? So firstly, what are tremors? All mammals have the ability to release tension through shaking. This is a primal response to stress, and it helps to basically maintain homeostasis in the body, quite often when that fight or flight response has happened. Now, unfortunately, in us humans, social conditioning often causes us to suppress these emotions and suppress our stress, and therefore we store it all up in the body, which results in both physical and psychological tension. And this obviously impacts on our physical and emotional health. So usually in other mammals, or in humans who are able to manage their stress appropriately, the central nervous system instinctively gets rid of all this tension through rapid muscle contraction and relaxation. And what this does is it calms the body during that stress response, when the adrenal state is in overdrive and you've got release of all these hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol. Now, these tremors may come with sensations of heat or sudden sensations of release spreading throughout the body. And you'll see this quite often, sometimes if you watch like these wildlife programs, of sort of maybe if an animal has been attacked, but sort of survives, and then you'll see the animal shaking to kind of get rid of that stress, and that's a natural, sort of stress response. But, as I said, in us humans, due to social conditioning and expectations, due to maybe culture, we tend to suppress these tremors because we, sort of have this fear of being seen as weak or vulnerable, you know, and many of us, particularly boys, grow up being told, you know, it's that thing of where you're told, oh, don't cry, you know, come on, stop crying, you know, be a big boy. And it's the same sort of thing. So it kind of almost instills this this sort of fear of expressing emotions. And so these new normal primal responses that we see in other mammals, quite often in us, it's all suppressed. And so we end up storing all this stress, and instead of the nervous system then having this restorative effect on the body, it actually dysregulates and it becomes dysfunctional, and then chronic pain patterns develop. And this is what happens in something like PTSD, where a person is under long-term stress. They're stuck in that fight or flight response. All those stress hormones are still circulating, and the nervous system is actually the root of the problem, because that has dysregulated. And until that homeostasis is returned to the system, all this stress is going to continue to circulate, and our tension levels are going to build up and build up. So why do these tremors happen? Well, we've just answered that a little bit. So when we enter this fight or flight response, the body is under threat, and you know, it may shake to kind of release these hormones that are sort of getting stored up, the adrenaline and the cortisol. Now, this is a natural response of the autonomic nervous system, which enables us to deal with the threat, and then we can return to a baseline mode so that we don't remain in that survival mode, in that high constant state of stress. Now, if we actually sort of do this shaking, these neurogenic tremors, is what we call them, you know, then we have this very productive means on, you know, to overcome this overactive sort of activity between the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland and the adrenal glands, in order to just rebalance ourselves and release all these sort of pent-up emotions and stresses. And so these neurogenic tremors, they're really basically sort of a consequence of a very complex neuroendocrine system. And as we know, you know, all of the systems of the body often, you know, work together. But of course, some of us, as we've said, you know, particularly like those with PTSD or due to social conditioning, whatever it may be, we, you know, our nervous systems become dysfunctional, and we then lose this ability to kind of recalibrate our nervous system through this primal response, through these neurogenic tremors, through the shaking. We're taught to suppress our emotions from an early age, meaning that any emotional trauma is then repressed in the muscles and builds up as tension. And so what happens then is that these neurogenic tremors that should kind of come out to help us recalibrate, they don't, and so they sort of everything, all the stress hormones and everything that should kind of bring about those tremors, they just stay there in whatever areas of tension we have in our bodies. But eventually, in some people, even though we may have repressed all this stress, for some people, when they do then go and seek a treatment such as a massage, which really helps to release that tension and break down all of these stored emotions and helps to regulate the nervous system, what happens is that these neurogenic tremors can then get released, causing that spasming in the muscle. And to someone who's maybe had a lot of built up stress, you know, they will really wonder kind of what's going on here. You know, it's quite a sort of strange experience for a lot of people. Now, each person will have an individual tremor pattern, and this will be determined by their past history, by their experiences and what has caused this build up of stress, what their upbringing was like, you know, how they were sort of taught to show their emotions, you know, and also sort of the physiological patterns of tension in the body. And the location of these tremors and the type of tremors will be controlled by the brainstem. There may be, you know, large amplitude tremors where there is significant shaking, often due to a large amount of superficial tension being broken down. Now, alternatively, they could be more of just a sort of a vibration rather than a full-on spasm, and it, you know, often you know, may just move through the body as the body relaxes and as all this tension is released. And so this is why clients who do, you know, an extreme amount of exercise, you know, or who have massages that break down all this tension, may experience these tremors. So it's not even just something with massage. Even, you know, people who sort of do full-on workouts every day, you know, they could also experience these tremors. So how we know why these tremors happen, how do they therefore return the body to a relaxed state? Well, as we said, PTSD, you know, will certainly make a person more prone to experiencing these neurogenic tremors, because the body is stuck in that sort of anticipatory stress response. It's constantly in survival mode. But animals don't actually suffer with PTSD because they have this natural instinct to shake, to release the trauma from their bodies. But us humans, you know, quite often when we go through trauma or we experience an extremely stressful situation, you know, we don't always have a means of escape. You know, for example, with domestic abuse, you know, sometimes you don't feel able to fight, but you don't feel able to run either, and that's how, you know, we get stuck in this stress cycle. We then become frozen and develop PTSD, and all those stress hormones, the cortisol and the adrenaline, are still circulating in the body. You know, excess energy will be trapped in our bodies, and this all, you know, contributes to not only psychological pain but also physical pain, and there will be that build-up of tension. This repeated stress cycle often leads to high blood pressure, formation of deposits in the arteries, changes in the brain. Quite often short-term memory is affected. There will be high anxiety levels, you know, tendencies for depression, and also addictive behaviours. Now, when this tremor mechanism is activated in a safe and controlled environment, such as when you have a massage, the body is then able to naturally rebalance itself, because it will release those deep patterns of tension, all of that stress. It will release those stress hormones that have just been circulating with nowhere to go. You know, and it does this through these tremors. And this then obviously helps the nervous system to, you know, sort of recalibrate and basically calm down. So, you know, and then what happens is that when we next encounter a stressful situation, the stress response is more likely to work as it should, you know, where it then returns to the baseline after that stressful event, instead of, you know, keeping this cycle of the stress hormones going in the body. Now, these therapeutic neurogenic tremors often move along the spine, releasing chronic tension and basically rejecting that fight or flight response of the sympathetic nervous system. This instinctive response in the body, you know, if it happens in a therapeutic environment, it doesn't need to be repressed. You know, there's no reason for a client to then feel vulnerable or you know, scared that they'll be seen as weak, because it's all part of the therapy. And this instinctive response in the body, it basically will initiate that release of deep physical tension. And of course, it's that deep physical tension that pushes us into those, you know, defensive postures, and, you know, that then we then get compensatory tension build up, which causes more problems. Now, one thing that to be aware of, whether it's you having a massage or whether it is you as the therapist giving a massage to someone who has these neurogenic tremors, you know, during any release of trauma, there may be an intense emotional release, and you know, potentially in someone who has undergone maybe abuse, or maybe sort of military type trauma. There may also then be the potential for recollections and flashbacks of that past trauma. This is a sign of healing. This is the trauma leaving the body. Now, obviously, you have to kind of try and get the timing right. If you are using this as a therapy for something like PTSD, you have to ensure that you know, the client is at a time where they are ready to start healing. But, you know, if these tremors start to happen unexpectedly and you get this emotional release, if the client wants this to stop, then they can simply straighten their legs or roll onto their side, and this will then sort of have an effect on the nervous system, and the tremors should stop. Now, why is the nervous system so important to our healing? Well, you'll probably know the answer to this if you've seen any of my posts about domestic abuse and PTSD. The nervous system is constantly monitoring for threats, and if the defense mechanisms in place to deal with these don't work, then we enter this freeze response, which is all part of the stress response cycle. And in this freeze response, our physiology overrides our psychology in order to just survive. But once we actually feel safe and we're in a safe and therapeutic environment, we can start to heal. Now, in PTSD, the warning signs become automated, which it can be a beneficial thing, but it also makes it very difficult to identify and treat the root causes of our tension. Neurogenic tremors will basically address the trauma that we have not dealt with, that we have kept stored up. And it can potentially release years worth of stored tension and stress. So that is basically what neurogenic tremors are, why they happen, and you know, certainly if you are sort of aware that you are prone to these, and you go and see a new massage therapist, it may just be worth mentioning that you've experienced these before. But yeah, so that's really it. But if you are seeking therapy in terms of massage for something like abuse or trauma, do also take a look at my posts on how massage can help with that. You can subscribe to my channel, and you'll be notified of any future videos coming out. Or you can contact me, you can comment down below, or you can contact me through my Facebook or Instagram. I'm on there as the Medical Massage Lady, and I will come back to you. Yeah, so that's it on neurogenic tremors, and I will see you next time. Bye.